How It All Fits Together, and The Truth Pamphlet. This is from the website howitallfitstogether.weebly.com. That's Weebly. How It All Fits Together, Exposing the Elite, homepage. Welcome to How It All Fits Together, where we will be decoding the agenda of the dangerous group of elite men who influence and control our society, and analyzing their oppression of us and how to stop it. We believe a small group of dangerous men are dominating politics, the media, the economy, and our culture in order to enrich and empower themselves and, in some cases, also to brutalize others for their own enjoyment. This site is an overview of the various ways in which they are controlling and attacking us, of how these tactics fit together, and of how to fight them. It is an attempt to navigate the various twists and turns of their influence and the areas they are corrupting, and how it all fits together. People who accept that Hitler killed millions of Jews, people who accept that children are molested, and people who accept that there are people insane enough to murder others for pure entertainment are woefully unable or unwilling to accept that groups of people might do these same things simply while holding government, military, or royal positions. It is commonly accepted that destructive and unethical groups of people have dominated the governments and royal families of the world throughout history. It only becomes quote-unquote insane when one believes that they haven't arbitrarily stopped doing that in the past 100 years. Crimes so unspeakable that most people don't even believe they're happening are being committed in our world, but we scream at the top of our lungs and we are ignored even more, or worse, we are labeled crazy conspiracy theorists. The public at large does not believe that seemingly unconnected things, for example, pollution, Hollywood, modern culture, contemporary politics, the psychiatric industry, occultism, and misogyny all stem from the same source and are all poisonous to both our physical and moral health. Both children and adults are suffering sexual and other abuses that are not stopped because merely claiming they exist is considered a conspiracy theory. A viewpoint the abusers are glad our society holds because it means their victims will never escape and they will never be caught. High-up game players largely exist and operate behind the scenes and are therefore not called to justice. Culture and real art are steadily disappearing, and ethics have all but disappeared from some sections of society. Economics, politics, and the entire world itself are being threatened by this force. Working together, we can fight the evil, enlighten others, and galvanize a group of aware people to destroy the elite's power once and for all. The Truth Pamphlet. The Truth. An overview of elite oppression. Quote, when a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous and its speaker a raving lunatic. Quote, Dresden James. Quote, to learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Voltaire. Quote. Is there something wrong with the world today? Are morals and honesty dying? Are women and men, blacks and whites, religious minorities and Christians oppressed? Where did all the corruption and crime come from? Do you mistrust both the left and right wing? Powerful groups of men have banded together to try to dominate the rest of the world. Some are murderous and even pedophilic, but are rarely caught because they cover for each other. Worse, their motives go unnoticed by, or are disbelieved by, those who think that a Christian group can behave this way, but not an occult one. These groups, largely male, rich, and white, are influenced by ancient occult, meaning hidden, knowledge. This occult hidden knowledge preaches hierarchy and domination, and teaches practical methods of mass psychological control and trickery, disguised as spirituality or magic. This magic was transmitted from ancient Egypt and Babylon to certain sects of Judaism, like Talmudism and Kabbalah, to medieval groups like the Knights Templar, to modern Freemasonry, which generated the OTO, LaVeyan Satanism, and Scientology. It's no coincidence that these above elitist groups preach that might makes right and viciously attack their opponents. They dismiss as a conspiracy any claim of a connection among these groups and deny the surprisingly large influence they hold, while simultaneously bragging about it. An unhealthy type of masculine mystique they inherited is what makes modern society anti-woman, anti-birth, and anti-life. They exaggerate historical misogyny, which they often caused, to make today's culture seem pro-woman in comparison. They consider blacks a lower species. Aleister Crowley, the British occultist who boasted that he was the great beast 666, and who was one of the most highly decorated Freemasons ever, believed blacks, Jews, and women were morally and mentally inferior to white males. This is why the media, which is largely influenced by the Freemasons, the OTO, the general occult elite, and powerful individuals who share their mindset, pump degrading culture into the black community and give blacks less power and protection than white people. They then turn blacks against all whites, and vice versa, to make us fight each other and keep the attention off themselves. The mentalities that influenced Crowleyism also inspired both the Nazis and the communists. These groups have a series of steps or degrees that one must pass in order to make it to the inner or top circle. The unethical agenda and beliefs of top members are not shared with the often good-hearted newer members, who may not even know an inner circle or hierarchy exists. For example, new Freemasons are told that there are only 3 degrees, when really there are 97. Only when a member of these groups seems like he will adhere to and keep secret the vile behaviors of the top core is he allowed to progress upwards. The OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, is a graduate school for high-level Freemasons. It condenses the 97 Masonic degrees into just 11. Outsiders are told that there is no connection between the two groups, but the OTO is to the Masons as orange juice concentrate is to oranges. Skull and Bones and the Bohemian Grove are also related to Masonry and to the general occult group circle. Several famous people are or were affiliated with the OTO. Jay-Z, Peaches Geldof, rocket pioneer Jack Parsons, and even Charles Manson. Opponents Bush and Kerry are affiliated with Skull and Bones. The elite also hold the beliefs of the quote-unquote Jewish Talmud, a racist, sexist, vile piece of writing that has nothing to do with real Judaism, Old Testament Hebrews, or most Jews. It claims Jesus, who preached love and honesty, had sex with his donkey, is boiling in feces in hell, and that his mother Mary was a whore. It also allows child rape and cheating and murder of Gentiles. Talmudic scholars are told not to answer honestly when asked if the writings contain this material. It is perhaps the best-kept secret in Western history. Holocaust history is used as an excuse to create sympathy for the Talmudic overlords and high-up Jews who abuse both innocent and lower-level Jews and also infiltrate and abuse Gentile nations. These groups, high-level Masons, OTO, Talmudic Jewish elites, and the media they influence and buy off, spread racism and misogyny, training white males to hate women and non-whites, and then provoking these groups to fight back against innocent white males who, for better or for worse, were more powerful historically and could have defended us most successfully. Blacks and women are trained to ignore and even defend the real culprits, because these groups claim to honor the sacred feminine, minority races, Jews, and victims in general. This steering of demographic groups against each other creates chaos, which the elites believe will create an authority vacuum which will allow them to take power. They believe the chaotic state, created by their group hatred and irresponsible social liberation they peddle, will lead people to welcome any authority, even theirs. But they will use it to enslave, not protect. They bring up the burning times and Salem hangings to generate unearned sympathy for themselves by trying to paint their spirituality as part of the same spiritual circle as traditional witchcraft, so they can denounce opponents as bigoted and closed-minded witch hunters and appeal to kind-hearted or minority-friendly people. Lots of people believe the idea of a secret society working in powerful positions behind the scenes is just a conspiracy theory. But not only is there evidence for this, it has been this way in history for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years. Small-minded and unethical humans have always sought to dominate the masses. In fact, to believe small groups of evil people have always tried to take over and abuse others, and that this has happened all throughout history, but has randomly stopped happening in the modern era, is the real conspiracy theory. Some Freemasonic symbols to watch for in the media and on buildings, including and especially government and official ones, are the eye on top of the pyramid. This symbol, featured on the back of our money, represents the Masonic view of the world. The bottom represents uneducated masses. The further up the pyramid, the more power and knowledge the individuals represented have. At the very top is an I, representing those who have full knowledge of the goals and motives of the Masonic plan and also of the situation people on all lower levels are in, especially in relation to the upper levels. The square and compass. The square represents the earth and whatever belongs to it, while the compass represents the heavens. It, like the eye and pyramid, can be seen in many TV shows, buildings, and logos and insignia. The letter G. In Masonry, the deity is the great architect of the universe, G-A-O-T-U, Gaotu. Lower level Masons are told that G represents things like God, and intermediates are told it means geometry. In actuality, the great architect of the universe is revealed to be Lucifer. Naturally, most low-level knife and fork Masons would be horrified by this, so this information is saved for the high-level adepts, who, despite their claim to teach enlightenment, purposely keep their fellow knife and forkers in the dark. The mass abortion goal is also pushed by these elites. Although life-saving abortions can be done with relatively little pain for mother and baby, the purpose of mass abortions is to decrease the numbers of certain groups of people that they don't like. Many abortion advocates are eugenicists who want to get rid of the physically weak and unwanted races. They push abortion by claiming they're protecting women, but abortions, at least the way they do it, are often more traumatic than childbirth, which doesn't have to be traumatic. Documentaries like MAFA 21 show the abortion industry serves blacks disproportionately. Blacks and Native Americans are also sterilized against their will when going in for abortions or other operations. Many women who have aborted say that if they weren't poor or had support, they would have kept their baby. But the elite's greedy policies make this impossible for some people. Abortion should be rare and should be done in a much more painless and natural way for both mother and baby. The phallic tools used by doctors to penetrate the uterus and baby are tools of rape. Abortions would be rare if men weren't trained to impregnate women and leave them, and if sex and sexuality wasn't so heavily emphasized everywhere. Elites are behind the transgender movement. Transgenders themselves deserve to have their rights respected. The purpose of the movement, however, is not to protect their rights, but to use them as a battering ram against the rest of society, and also to sterilize people who don't adopt gender roles. Girls who self-defend or who don't like the misogyny heaped upon them are masculine, because in the elite's opinion, only males' self-worth matters, so these girls must really be boys inside. Boys who are compassionate or sexually abused are feminine, because men aren't supposed to be nice or be rape objects. Only women are. Children who get surgery to make their bodies match these roles become sick or infertile. The elite groups worship androgynous figures such as Baphomet, the penis and breasts-bearing goat god, and Adam Kadmon, the half-male, half-female, who supposedly impregnated himself. Is this why trans is so popular? The trans agenda breaks up families and promotes a lack of reproduction among people the elite considers threats. Have you ever noticed its open-minded, intelligent, or adventurous sorts who are often drawn or recruited to the LGBT movement, as it currently is? There isn't anything inherently wrong with wearing clothing that one's society associates with the opposite sex, if it is truly one's choice. But when it is done in massive amounts and for the purpose of ushering in an era in which true diversity is lost and people are shamed out of their own identities, then it becomes a problem, and it's no better than forcing people into traditional roles. Much male-to-female transgenderism is caused by autogynephilia, a sexual paraphilia in which a man is turned on by the idea of himself as a woman. Non-autogynephilic children, who are dysphoric because they don't conform to sex stereotypes, are pushed to get surgery or medication because these men do not want to admit that they have a fetish. These adult men attribute their state to feeling like a woman, which they claim is so traumatic that hormones or surgery is the only cure. They then try to claim that they have the same psychological state as those children in order to legitimize their own mindset and get attention and sympathy. What makes one a woman is rarely defined, and when it is, it relies on misogynistic stereotypes and ignores female biology, which is the central reason women are oppressed. It is also a problem when men are told that they are gay because they have been taught to despise women or do not want the burden of a wife and family, and when women feel they must turn to lesbianism out of fear of hateful men. LGBT rights are necessary and important, but an overabundance of homosexual people means that reproduction will plummet. Adoption is often difficult, and surrogacy is often traumatic for birth mothers or sperm donors who develop an attachment to their child. While it is wrong to make gays straight, it is equally wrong to convince straights they are gay. The purpose behind this agenda is to depopulate us. A small population is easy to control. Have you also noticed that homosexuality is subtly coded as open-minded? This pushes intelligent, open-minded people to not reproduce. While some of us are truly gay and deserve protection and respect, many of us aren't. Straight relationships create children, while gay ones do not. So the media pushes an overabundance of gay ones, especially among intelligent people. Heterosexual relationships may be less likely to be about sex only in this society, since the goal of birth is included, and since our media promotes shallow sex culture to gays more than to straights. But this is unclear as of yet, and obviously wouldn't apply to all gay couples. Elites also steer right-wingers to bully homosexuals, making us choose between two undesirable groups, left and right, who are both abusive in their own way and are always fighting each other anyway. Talmudic Jews, high-up men who have no spiritual and often no biological descendancy from biblical Hebrews, and who are the generators of modern occultism, not only oppress other Jews but attack Gentiles as well, calling them an inferior species and insisting the U.S. always side with Israel. U.S. warships have been attacked by Israelis posing as Egyptians. Middle Eastern crises are used as excuses to oppress Palestinians and deprive them of a homeland, because they are lesser people. The Talmudic Jews use the Holocaust as an excuse to Holocaust others, and often ignore or defraud real Holocaust victims. AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, has America by the throat, or by another set of organs, and demands never-ending taxpayer funding, which is used to commit atrocities on peaceful Arabs who've never met a terrorist in their lives. Many Muslim or Arab terrorist groups may actually be controlled by the elite, who use them to stir up hatred against innocent Muslims and Arabs and to attack innocent Jews and Israelis, which is a twofer to the elites, as it prolongs the fighting and keeps both people's eyes off the real enemies at top. Aleister Crowley seems obscure, but he has a lot of influence. He's highly regarded by famous people even today after his death, from politicians to popular culture celebrities, like Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page, who purchased Crowley's mansion, and the Beatles, who had considerable influence over the mentality of the public. Crowley's mentality, that one should follow only one's own intuition and drive, seems great until you remember how many sick people there are. Do what thou wilt is okay for most of us, but for rapists, murderers, and those who want to conquer others, it only congratulates their sociopathy and narcissism, and shames us out of criticizing the results, for fear that we are being judgmental. Despite its spirituality, this philosophy is behind the materialistic and shallow attitude people have today, in which people are ridiculed for being too attached to a friend, a tradition, a cherished object from childhood, or even a spouse or unborn child. People are urged to let it go, and every so often are even diagnosed psychologically for being too sentimental or loyal. Even if this isn't officially admitted, in actuality, things are judged by their material results. People are hired for their working capacity, their immoral or unfair attitudes ignored. Politicians are elected because they will get things done and will give the public stuff, not because of their ethics. Relationships are entered into and judged by what interests and hobbies the people have in common, rather than by how close the partners feel and what their values are. And heaven forbid someone get too attached. They are stalkers, puppyish, or codependent and are asking to be abused, and so need to toughen up or stop having feelings so they and their partners can have a healthy relationship. Do what thou wilt leads to moral relativism, where people no longer think some things are wrong, even if they are objectively harmful. Ironically, so-called anti-racists and feminists support cultural relativity, which says not to judge other cultures as wrong because it is racist to do so, even though the victims themselves are minorities and are usually female. Parents no longer can have strong influence on their children and cannot keep beloved cultural and family traditions from dying out, their survival being placed in the hands of kids who think that going to the bar or playing video games is more important. After all, you can't judge, right? And insisting on sharing a wonderful cultural treasure with your kids is taking away their individuality, no matter how grateful they and their future family and society might be someday. Parents who want to keep traditions alive are using subjective feelings and sentiment to make decisions, not objective materialism-based logic. There is no pragmatic reason in society's view to push the cultural tradition, so accordingly, there's no legitimate one. Do what thou wilt has far more dangerous consequences. A summary of Aleister Crowley's writings says, quote, "It is quite safe to say that the Book of the Law is the easy guide to understanding the insane mindset of the OTO. It tells us that, quote, every man, woman, and intermediately sexed individual is free to interpret and communicate self by any means of sexual practices at all, regardless of ethical, legal, or religious concerns, etc., provided that all parties are fully aware of all implications and responsibilities and heartily agree. However, if a woman asks why a man wants to kiss her, he may choke her into submission." Close quote. The full quote is, "If will stops and cries why, invoking because, then will stops and does not. If power asks why, then power is weakness." From Aleister Crowley's Liber al vel legis, Chapter 2, page 30 to 31, via Liber Oz. There is no reason why a star should continue in its orbit. Let her rip. Every time the conscious acts, it interferes with the subconscious, which is hadit. It is the voice of man and not of a god. Any man who listens to reason ceases to be a revolutionary. The newspapers are past masters in the Lodge of Sophistry number 333. They can always prove to you that it is necessary and patriotic and all the rest of it that you should suffer intolerable wrongs. From the new comment on 2:30. It is ridiculous to ask a dog why it barks. One must fulfill one's true nature. One must do one's will. To question this is to destroy confidence, and so to create an inhibition. If a woman asks a man who wishes to kiss her why he wants to do so, and he tries to explain, he becomes impotent. His proper course is to choke her into compliance, which is what she wants anyhow. From new comment on 2:31. Close quote. The site above also lists various quotes of Crowley's defending of child abuse. If he tries to explain, he becomes impotent. In other words, if you ask someone of this mindset why he's abusing you or ignoring his will's effect on you, you're weakening him and ruining his star, and you better shut up or else you're oppressing him and taking away his freedom. And your will be damned. Even large-scale things like September 11th have eerie connections to the occult traditions. The numbers 11, 77, 93, and 175 were significant to Crowley and still are to his followers today. George H.W. Bush announced plans for a New World Order on September 11, 1990, 11 years before the attack. He was 77 when they occurred and 66 when he made that speech. Flight 11 hit floor 93 of one tower, and Flight 175 hit floor 77 of the other tower. The plane that crashed in a field was Flight 93. The mere fact that the numbers of the two floors the planes crashed into, 93 and 77, were also flight numbers is highly unlikely on its own. Never mind when considering also that these numbers are specifically significant to Crowleyism. In addition, the Pentagon, the building attacked by the hijacked Flight 77, was 77 feet high and was located on the 77th meridian west. A mystery plane spotted above the Pentagon had been identified as the Venus 77. Side note, Venus is the morning star and the morning star is Lucifer. In addition, the Pentagon, like the five-pointed pentacle and pentagram, is another important occult symbol. Whether one believes in the significance of these numbers or not, many people in high places do, and there's practically no doubt that they had a hand in this act of mass murder. The occult also places significance on doubles or twins, hence the twin towers. The goat is another symbol they put a lot of weight on. Recall that the devil is often portrayed as a goat or with a goatee and horns. Occult figure Baphomet has a goat head. It is therefore significant that President Bush was reading My Pet Goat to school children at the time of the attacks. Despite naysayers' attempts to claim it as a conspiracy theory, there is convincing evidence that many people, including politicians, whistleblowers, and even celebrities, have been deliberately murdered by the elites, their deaths made to look like accidents. These may be because the individuals knew too much and were trying to reveal it, or because the elites want to kill off a beloved figure to put the populace in a frightened or depressed mindset, or draw our attention away from some crime they've committed. The symbol and numbers found in these deaths are just as suspicious as those found in the Trade Center attacks. How long is it until they start killing or suiciding us? Or have they already started?